Mike, thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
We have awesome conversations off mic camera, and now we're going to have awesome conversation.
Yeah, no pressure, but I really hope this one goes well.
This is, it's going to go fantastic. You know, people ask the question, are you always in sales? You ever heard that question? I've heard it asked before. As business people, as business owners, I've heard it proposed that you're always selling. You know, I for a while I refuted that. I thought, no, I don't want to be that guy, because we generally equate sales with an adversary, because when you're at the mall or where you're at the car lot or wherever you are, a salesperson is attempting to take something from you, your time and or your money.
Right.
And you're not sure if there's a value proposition that's worthy. So what do? You're usually on the defense because there's a threat. So salespeople can be considered threatening.
Absolutely.
And so that's where the contention can come in, like, I don't know if I always want to feel like I'm a salesperson, but there's a much different way to reframe this entire process of how we approach business and even family life in terms of selling, because we're really not selling, we're solving problems.
Right.
I mean, the sale happens as a result of a discovery.
Right. Boy, that's interesting that you brought this up, because I have opinions about sales.
Go fig.
Would you like to know one?
Please.
Okay, I think that sales is the most honorable profession in the world. That's how I believe it. And here's why. And I know it's slimy too. Okay, I know it can be all the things, right? Well, can't everything be good or bad, right? What value does a hammer have? I can build a house with it, or I can destroy somebody with it. Same with sales. I can build value by selling, right? Or I can destroy something with selling, right? And it comes down to the motive, the intent. What is the highest and best use of that tool? So sales to me is a tool, and I agree we're always selling. Sales is a tool that connects people that have problems with solutions. And when you simplify it like that, and if you're a good person, a decent person, you don't even have to be a great person, but if you're a decent person with a decent motive, like, it's okay if you want all the money. There's more than enough to go around. But if you're out there leading with, hey, I'm going to solve some problems in the marketplace, guess what? If you do it well enough, you're going to reap a tremendous reward. Would you agree?
I agree. And that's where I believe the distinction should lie. It should lie in, I'm not here to simply solve my problems. I have problems too. That's part of the reason why we're having this conversation. One of my problems is, if you own a business, you have to make payroll.
Right.
You have to have operations.
There are problems to solve.
There are problems to solve.
And I don't aspire. When I worked at large corporation, and I was exposed to the word challenges, like, that never tasted right to me. Like, these are some problems. And now I know, as a more mature businessman, that I have problems and I have solutions. Challenges aren't really problems. It's not naming it correctly. I think it's minimizing what people have. You know what? When somebody has if somebody has severe osteoporosis, and they're at risk of a fracture, they don't have a challenge.
You're not going to call it a challenge.
They got a problem. Yeah. Your DEXA scan is minus 4.5. You're severe osteoporotic, and you could be standing there, and you could just tumble. And 33% of those people who do have a hip fracture post age 50 die. That's a problem. That's not a challenge to me, right? So I only illustrate that because let's call a duck a duck. People have problems. A great salesman connects solutions real solutions to those people with those real problems.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's an honorable profession.
And I think that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I never even considered the terminology. We're both wordsmiths. We're geeks about how language is presented. If you ever follow Mike's Facebook posts, he sculpts. He sculpts. And so it's important. It's important to make those distinctions. When you brought that up, it made me think about something in the medical field. You brought up the medical field. And do you ever think of a physician as a salesperson? No. You don't think of the physician as someone, well, they're trying to get me to get this surgery. I mean, maybe in some cases, but as you talked about earlier with the moral, ethical approach to any type of business exchange, because the medical field is a business too.
Mm-hmm.
However, the physician's approach, the doctor's approach is, I want to find out what your ailment is. You're here because something hurts, or perhaps it's going to hurt, or there's some kind of even life-threatening situation. And my role is to present you with the options that you are satisfied with solving your problem. And that doesn't happen simply by me putting on a coat. I mean, I love the physician's approach. You talk about questions. I mean, how many questions does a physician ask? It's remember the forms you fill out when you of course you do, right? Yeah. I mean, there's so many questions, and most of us will just like kind of go through all of them and say, no, I don't have this, I don't have that.
Heart disease and hypertension. I don't even know what that is.
Right.
No. No.
But they're doing that because they want to understand your total situation.
There has to be a picture.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I know where you're going with this. But also when I started doing business with your company, tremendous value in that. Well, you presented, this is what I do. And I'm sitting here going, okay, as a businessman, man, I got this problem, I got that, I got 99 problems, and he can solve 98 of them. I'm onboarding. And then what'd you do? You sent me a questionnaire.
And it's long.
It wasn't that, I mean, anybody listening who wants to use his services, please do it. It was brilliant, but it's not that long of a questionnaire, but you're painting a picture. You're understanding the story, and the story is everything.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And this is as we get into this conversation, someone listening is like, okay, I'm starting to see where you guys are going with this, because, and by the way, as if you're a listener and you've been listening, these are all unscripted. Like, we don't have lengthy sort of like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We have a very small, like, hey, what would be super cool to talk about, and let's just riff, right?
Yeah, today's topic came up from just spitballing in your office.
Literally.
It worked out good, yeah.
Like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So the story, and because everyone's life is a story, and that story is so meaningful to them. And I believe that some of the most effective people in sales, again, we're all in sales, whether you're selling your kids on whether or not they should do their homework, or you're selling your boss on whether or not they should take a TPS report, and whatever.
I've seen your wife. You're a master salesman.
I'm married up for sure. So the point I'm moving toward is that the most effective people in this realm of sales find your story as meaningful to them as it is to you.
I would agree. I think there's something moving. I think that great salespeople have a vision and have a purpose, and I think that it's important for them to remain focused. Now, that can change over time, right? Obviously, people change, they grow, they learn. We were talking this morning about how with age is wisdom and reflection, and you understand certain things, and your behavior changes, your beliefs change, all that stuff. But in sales, man, when you understand the person's story, and I love how Donald Miller talks about story branding with a business too, right? Setting, most businesses, most salespeople come in like gunslingers, right? I'm going to solve your problems. We're going to be in the area. We'd like to climb on your roof. we're going to get you that claim. You know, it's a gunslinger, and then they're out of town. Off they go, right? Dun, 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 dun. And, you know, they're gunslingers, and that's cool. Okay, that works. But you know who really gets it? This is not my content. This is Donald Miller. Brilliant story branding. Understanding that the consumer is the hero. And we, as a salesperson, I'm the guide.
That's right.
They're the hero. But I can only find out how to guide them by understanding their what? Their story.
Yeah.
And how do you find the story?
You have to ask questions.
You got to ask questions.
You got to ask questions. I love that, and I've taken that same philosophy into my daily grind as well, and I know you have too. It's so refreshing when you wake up in the morning or whatever time you wake up to consider yourself a guide. Okay, who do I have the privilege, the blessing, the honor of guiding today?
Right.
It completely changed that mindset from I'm going to go out and I'm going to go close 30 deals today. I'm going to be the top salesperson.
Get in the Porsche.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong.
And that's fine.
Yeah. There's tangible, there's intangible, there's lots of different kinds of rewards. However, I dare you to tell that to your client.
Right.
Yeah. The reason why we're doing this right now is because
I got a quota, baby.
I got a quota.
Car
My
dealers,
name's
man.
going to be on that wall.
Like, you know when to buy a car on the 31st at 4 o'clock.
Better believe it. And so when you suit up, if you will, and whatever you wear with the guide suit.
That's interesting. Suit up. I like that.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah. You suit up and you're like, okay, I'm ready to shepherd a hero today. And so you, back to the questions, like I can't ever hope to take you to a place, by the way, a place that I am uniquely qualified to take you to. There's no other person like you on the planet. Period.
100%.
You are you.
One of one.
One of one. Which means that you are uniquely qualified to provide access to a place where someone could not go experientially without you. Because no two people can ever create the exact same experience because
Right.
we're just different. And times are different, contexts are changing, moments change, all that has an effect. So own that, believe in that. Believe that you can suit up and you can provide guidance that will open a doorway where you can help someone walk through it and be the hero of that story in that way. But it certainly starts with questions.
It does. And, you know, look at some professions like teacher, pastor, coach, the kids' football team has a coach, the kids out there with the muscle and the grind, right? But they can't figure out what to do. Well, the coach knows the story. Because he's coached the kid. He knows his story. He's an effective trainer. He's dedicated. He's loyal. He shows up. He puts in the work. I'm going to put him in the game. I know his story, and I'm going to guide him. That's sales. That kid wants the trophy.
Yeah.
And the coach says, I know how to get you there.
Yeah.
It's the coach is Yoda.
Yeah. There's so much to that. Let's take this and start talking through some of those questions. Number one, you brought up vision. You brought up the end game. Mm-hmm. You brought up the massive impact. Do you want the trophy? Do you want the trophy?
Oh, I thought you were asking me. Yeah, I'll take the trophy.
Yeah, but that's what we asked, right? The first question, because if you don't want the trophy,
right,
you're in the wrong room.
Is this if you see which, hey, the question is, are you going to show up for practice? Here's when you didn't show up. Okay, why didn't you show up? I'm asking questions. What's your motive? Oh, my dog was sick. Okay, understand. You didn't show up again. What happened this time? Well, the kid he doesn't want the trophy, right? You learn the kid doesn't want the trophy, so you don't put him in. Vision is, questions can get you to understand the vision, and even yourself, your own personal vision. I have a coach. You know my coach. He gave me a list of questions, and he helped me establish a vision, right?
That's really important to just hang there for a moment, because you got to start. If you're listening and you think, well, how important is vision? It's been said, Proverbs 29:18. Without it, you perish. The people perish. It's essential.
It's math.
It's
It's one of the things I love about faith. I'm a math nerd. Faith is math.
Yeah.
If you accept, this is what happens. If you believe, this is what happens.
Yeah.
If you, without a vision, you perish.
Right. And because it's directional. And so without vision, you're like a ship without a rudder. And it's compelling because, as Stephen Covey said many, many years ago, we begin with the end in mind. That's vision. And interesting, I was rewatching a movie I hadn't seen in years, Anthony Hopkins, and he was a rich guy, and he was in the wilderness. I don't remember what the name of the movie was, but anyway, he was in the wilderness, and he was trapped there with another guy, and he has wits about him. The other guy was losing it. And he asked him a very simple question. He said, "Are you ready to die, Bob? Are you ready to die?" In his amazing voice, you can probably hear it. And the guy's like, "No, I'm not ready to die." But what he was doing was he was asking him a question. Look, I can guide you, but I need to know, because if you're ready to die,
It's over.
we're done. I'm going to go on my way because I'm not ready to die.
I'm going to spend my calories in my brain that I use for thinking, and I'm going to spend my calories that I use for moving my body forward on something different.
Yeah.
If we're not on the same team.
Yeah, and that's it, right? So this is what's really brilliant about what you're talking about. We move from adversary to ally because now we're on the same team. Now we're teammates because we have a common purpose,
Right.
which is driving us forward. We can't ever hope to know that unless we ask the first essential question: where are we going? Do we both want to have the same destination?
Yeah.
For you, for example, when it came to planning and strategy, hey, let's talk about some things that you want to accomplish, some ways that we can help you accomplish that, and see if we have some directional synergy so that we can then guide you so that you can be the hero, by the way, because when we have wins, guess what? Hey, congratulations.
Yeah,
You did that.
your business's role in my business is absolutely guide, because, as you grow in business, I think a lot of business people probably watching this, but as you grow in business and you suffer failures and you learn to fall forward and propel yourself forward from them, and you understand the value of failure, you understand what you end up doing is saying, okay, I'm no longer suited for this role. I'm incomplete. And I've asked all the questions that I know to ask. I don't know what I don't know. In comes seeking guide. The guide says, here are the questions. And I will tell you, I've never told you this, but working with your company has helped me go from my initial strategy, which was I started these businesses when I was 49, and I thought, I'm going to do this till I'm 60, and I'm going to cash out. And then as they became more successful, I started realizing that there's a flow, cash flow, and gosh, what am I going to do when I sell for cash flow? I'm going to have these points in my account that are worth less. You can redeem them for less things every day. That's how I look at money, as points. It's not money, it's points.
Good. I like that, yeah.
It's a rewards account.
I've never heard it said like that.
It's true. That's
awesome.
how I don't look at money as money. Money is worthless to me. Nate, money has zero value to me. They're points. It's literally like getting the points, like the 2% from your credit card. It's points. And I exchange them for things. That's how I look at money. But working with you has helped me to see that, wow, this labyrinth that I saw in front of me, which is just mind-blowing to me. And I'm not a real dumb guy, but this is difficult stuff. And once I started working with you, I started realizing, you know what? I don't ever have to sell these companies. I just have to structure them correctly so that I can just be the CEO and ultimately chairman of the board.
Yeah.
And just show up once a month for some high fives and good tides.
And the number one shareholder.
Number one, sure.
I mean, that's it.
I could never get there with you, but I'm on that path now. But getting back to questions, this has happened so many times in my life as a businessman. Growing up on a farm, poor, and food stamps, the whole thing. It's like you reach limits, right? And 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I never would have said that there are limits in my mind, my brain, right? But you hit these ceilings, and it's like, I don't even know what questions to ask. Maybe you're a business owner and you make, I don't know, you make $100,000. It's like, oh, I made $100,000. And it's like next year you make $100,000. That's because you have a $100,000 brain. You need to change your brain to a $500,000 brain. Maybe if you're lucky, you skip a level and go to $1 million brain, but it's going to be probably a 250. It's going to be a $500,000 brain, and then you stuck there, and then it's like, oh, what do I got to do? Who do I need to hang around? Or what questions do I need to ask so that I can become $1 million brain? I need to make $1 million, and you realize the next step is 10 million, and you can't fathom it because the next step isn't 2 million. You don't go from $100,000 to 250 to 500 to $1 million to 2 million. That's not how it goes. But you're never going to get there without knowing what questions to ask. And you're limited by things you don't even understand. You need a guide. And the guide knows what questions to ask. You know what I mean?
Well said.
And what was I going to say? When you discover how easy it is to get to the next level from the last level, everything becomes simple.
Yeah.
The more success you have, I'm not saying you don't have challenges, but here's what it is. You get better at solving harder challenges so that they become easier, right?
Yeah.
50 pounds is really hard, and then 50 pounds is easy.
True. It is. It's so important that you brought that up. I think I liken it to marathoning. I started out in my running days with a 5K. And the 5K, it's tough. If you've never been a runner, it will
I've run 2 of them with my daughter.
Absolutely.
I said run.
Walked. And you've got that journey. Just like with business, $100,000. Oh, if I can just get to my first one, $100,000. And then you say, well, I'm going to sign up for a 10K once you get proficient at that. And then you sign up for a half marathon and then a marathon. And I found that when I started training for a marathon, so maybe that's like, let's call it like the 10 million mark or whatever it is. I mean, getting a 5K was like nothing. 3 miles. It's like, that's just
you do it every day. Now you can do a 5K every day.
Yeah.
It's a woman.
But if I never set my sight on a marathon, the 5K would always be the goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to delineate. Like, ask yourself the question of what's possible. And you sometimes, as you rightly stated, don't even know what's possible. You don't know what your blind spots are. And that's why it's so important to surround yourself. You mentioned it, with people who have either been there and have crossed the mountaintop. Well, mentorship. By the way, coaches and mentors, a coach doesn't necessarily have to have achieved what you desire to achieve, but they can prepare you. A mentor, I found, is someone who's been there.
I agree. I was approached by a 21, 22-year-old person once, several years ago, who asked me if I wanted them to be my life coach. I was 51 or 2. Now, I didn't directly laugh at this person.
But if you're listening.
I did say no, thank you. And then I walked away and I laughed out loud. Those milestones, another thing I learned, it's really important to celebrate. Like, you did the 5K, right? Man, awesome. Celebrate, right? When I set a goal with my vision some years ago that I was going to make X amount of dollars per month. And when I did, I was going to reward myself, and I knew exactly what I wanted. Mm-hmm. Well, I achieved that goal about 6 months early, and I still have that Triumph motorcycle.
Nice.
That I bought myself for achieving that goal.
That's it. It's that and here back to the questions. You had to ask yourself the question, and this isn't just, by the way, if you're listening and you're starting to pick up on some of these, what we're talking about, it's not just sales when you have a client. You have to in some ways sell yourself on what's possible and what you can. You have to ask yourself
that's
that question.
really that's powerful. That's really important. What am I capable of? We all have those limiting beliefs.
It's a question.
Right. This is the most important question that I've learned to ask recently is, what don't I see? What don't I know? Or what don't I see here? Like in a situation, especially in my life as I'm trying to grow as a businessman, what don't I know? What don't I see? Whose counsel do I trust to come in and tell me my blind spots? If we ask, here's a great question that people can ask. Speaking of questions, I have a great question. This question helped me break through some strongholds. I really had some growth from this question. And I've taught this question to my kids. When you're faced with a problem, challenge, whatever you want to call it, a problem. When you're faced with a problem, I've learned to step back and say, all right, what would a smart person do? What would an expert do? 9 times out of 10, and maybe even more, I already know the answer. But, we should have another podcast another day about execution. Because if you look at a situation, I don't know, let me think if I can dream one up real quick, but let's say you're at an impasse. Most of the time, people have a high enough level of conscious acumen and experience to ask the question, what would a smart person do? And it's like, let's say it's 8:30 at night and you have to get up at 5 in the morning and your friend wants to have a cocktail. Meet me at the bar, just for one. All right, it's harmless. Now, this is a silly example, but it's harmless, right? It's a harmless thing. I'm going to go have one drink down at the blah, 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 and we're going to watch the game for a bit. Well, what would a smart person do? All right, because I really want to go see my buddy. I haven't seen him in a month. He's in town for one night, but I got this big presentation in the morning. What would a smart person do? I don't know. You have to figure it out yourself. But if I don't ask myself, and I have to ask myself that like a third person, because if I rely on my own wisdom inside the thing, I'm going to fail. So if I pull myself out of it emotionally and like I look at it pragmatically as a guide or as a coach, like coaching, Mike over here wanting to do it, well, what would a smart person do? Well, a smart person say, love you, bro, can't go. So the power of questions and the placement of your mindset when you ask the question is really important.
Yeah, and I think, and I've never really framed it that way, and it's so impactful when you take the time to consider that. And even if there's someone who you respect in this space, to personify it. Say, okay, what would Mike do in this situation? Right? I respect Mike in this area. Mike's been he's been an impactful, X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever the framework is, whether it's a parent, whether it's in business, whether it's in social settings in your community, whether it's an accountability partner who maybe you haven't contacted. Say, well, I can't get a hold of him right now or her right now. What would they say to do?
What would they like? Yeah. You already know. Like
you already know.
You already know. Like you just don't want to do it because they're right and you're wrong, and you don't want to be. So you do the wrong thing so that you actually turns out that you're right. Because if I choose my way, then I'm right. If I choose his way, my guide's way, then I was wrong. You don't want to be wrong. But I have, in 2 of my businesses, I have managers that run the places, right? And when I hired them, I mentored them, right? I taught them the ways of me, right? Like the way I do things. And some of them are great and some of them are not so great, maybe. But let's say it's the way I do things. Let's just say most of the things that I taught them were good, on the good side of the ledger. And I coach them and I mentor them for, say, 6 months or so. And they bring me their things and I teach them, hey, this is how I do things. And then I say, okay, it's your show. All right, so, and this may or may not be from personal experience, but one of them calls me and says, hey, this person has this situation and they want to do this, they want a refund, they want a whatever. So the first couple times I would say, okay, here's what I would do, blah, 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 blah. And then manager's meeting comes up, and then I say, look, you don't have to call me for these anymore. If it's under this dollar value, you already know what, like you've seen me make enough decisions, so you already know what I'm going to do, right? So just do that and then report to me what you did. And if there's any teaching or training we need to do, we'll do it then. But I trust you up to this dollar amount to make any decision you want, right? So what did I do? The same thing I do with my children, right? What would Mike do? What would my wife, Christine, she's the brilliant one. What would she do? What would mom do? And that's what we all do with our kids. We want them to ask those questions. But Nate, that question of what would a smart person do? What would my guide do? Has been so important in business and in personal life.
It is sobering. And
because most of us already know.
Yeah, we already know
the answer.
Yeah. It reminds me of a joke, not necessarily it can be funny. But there was a man who was having an issue with infidelity, and he went to his pastor, and he said, "Not sure what to do. I'm not sure, what I don't know, who should I ask about these?" He said, "Well, how about just ask your wife?"
Right. That is funny and so sad.
At the same time, right? Because when you ask your wife what you should do, it's the same question, right?
Right.
You already knew the answer.
You already know. Yeah. I'm going to pull up some scripture here.
Yeah, and as you're doing that, it's so if you're listening, that is it's such an important aspect of our decision making, because what it does is it frames the decision around the impact, because it's really a question of probabilities. And so when we are contemplating making a decision that we know is likely going to result in some kind of folly, we are playing a game of probabilities. We're saying, okay, you know what? It's mostly likely that the way I want to do it is going to lead me to a place of folly, but I'll take the risk. However, when I pose the question, then that becomes, well, I'm really asking the wise choice. There's wisdom in folly. And you know this out of Proverbs. And I used to ask my son this when he was younger, and he would make a mistake about life. And I'd ask him a question. Say, was that wise or foolish? If he, maybe backtalked or he didn't do something that was honorable, I'd say, was that wise or foolish? And he'd say, Dad, that was foolish. Like, okay, well, let's try it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's try it again. Let's go the wise route. Well, what would be a wise way to go about this? Well, if I did it like this, okay, let's do that. But the reframing of those questions, man, how life-giving is that, Mike?
It's ultimately life-giving. When I was on staff at a church, the senior pastor, if I could I was with this church 12 years, and I was on staff, I think 8 or 9. If I could take all of that time and squeeze it and shrink it down into one thing, what's the one thing that more than anything in life I learned in that season? It was this question. And a question. Here we go. And this is when I was going to school to become a pastor, right? So, I was in university, in school to become a credentialed minister, and all of that time, squeeze it together, what's the best thing that came out of it is this question: is it an eternal issue? Is it an eternal issue? So if you're a Christian and you're speaking of doctrine, well, you got Catholic, you got Methodist, you got Lutheran, you got your
Presbyterian,
non-denom, right? And that's all fine and dandy. Listen, guys, it's fun to talk about those things, but if you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and you've accepted Christ as your Savior, you're justified. You're made holy. Now, you've got to go through the sanctification process, and that's where it gets ugly, because people think that that's different things, right? Well, guess what? Are those other things eternal issues? Like infant baptism. Is that an eternal issue? I mean, really? Okay, whether or not you do this when you pray or you don't, or if you, what day you take as your Sabbath. Like, oh, he's working on Sunday, he's going to burn. No, he's not. It's not an eternal issue. What is the eternal issue? Right? Now, you might argue that there are other rewards for rightness after your salvation. Rightness meaning righteousness. There are rewards for that. And again, it's math. If you do this, you'll get this, right? But look at that question reframed in another way, right? Most people make decisions based on their ego. I want it my way. And my way is clouded by my worldview. And I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else. Like, I make some bad decisions sometimes, and really stinkers, because of how I grew up. And you might say I have a childhood issue, a trauma thing, or whatever, that's clouding my judgment. Well, maybe I do, right? But ultimately, is something an eternal issue? And I've grown to ask myself that question as I get older, especially with my children. Is it an eternal issue? Or is this really going to be a big deal? And in business, you ask, is this serving the vision? The use of your time is so important. We started out with salesmen, right? Salespeople. But let's relate salespeople and people in general. Yes, salespeople are people too. Right. But what's the highest and best use of your time? All right, is it, if I have a vision to do X, Y, and Z, and I set up my schedule to do that, well, should I take a call from this person? I have to make a decision. Should I spend my time with this person? Now it gets hard. Let's say that spending a day of my life with this person will not serve my vision, but maybe I have emotions that'll be satisfied. What will be satisfied with this choice, right? Or what will be hurt by this choice? These choices are really important, right? Now in my life, in this phase of my life, I've spend time on things that serve my vision. And serving my vision means serving people. So if I can serve people, then I'm serving my vision. And I'm fortunate enough now to have time to make those decisions, to spend time, right? So all of this, if I tied it up in a bow, is we need to ask ourselves questions. What's the highest and best use of my time? Is this serving my vision? Is this an eternal issue? If one of my children does something wrong, say, a young child spills their milk on the floor, right? I have a choice. How do I respond? I can tell you there's times that I've responded poorly, really poorly with my kids, and I can tell you that I've responded just like Jesus, right? But now we're getting back to sanctification, becoming less and less like our sin and more like the salvation of sin, right?
Set apart, made holy. I love that.
I just preached.
Synopsis. You did, man. And it's Thursday, preaching on Thursday. Hey, you never know what's going to happen on the call to leadership. That is such a clear way to frame this journey. And the thing about vision that you brought up is it's holistic. You've got different verticals, different aspects of it. You got your business, you got your family, you've got your self-care and your community and your all of those things. the overall vision, I believe, is less about work-life balance. I've lost that terminology, and harmony, and rather harmony.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that's really important. I want to make sure that it's undergirded, is that you have the time now, and in that time that you have did not just magically appear. This was intentional, directional, through some tension and some challenge and some problem solving along the way, and discovery and blind spots and head trash and coaching and all of these aspects of you being extremely focused on what is this life? What is the value, the highest value, you brought that up, the highest value of my time to perpetuate my vision for life. And then what happens when we begin to answer that question, we gain clarity. And clarity is power. And that power then helps us to create boundaries on what's acceptable and unacceptable to move me toward that. Decisions become easier.
Mm-hmm.
They do. You're like, you know what? Not in my vision.
Right. You work the muscle, I'm going to do my best to keep this on track. The greatest salespeople, the greatest connectors, the greatest success is people that get better at solving bigger problems for more people.
Yeah.
Right? Well, let me go back a little bit and say that when I learned that work-life balance for me was a worthless thought, I gained freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what I learned. I have one life. I get up in the morning, I'm Mike. I go to work, I'm Mike. I go home to my kids, I'm Dad, but to my wife, I'm Mike. I'm still Mike. Everywhere I go, I'm Mike. And, I'm not work Mike and off Mike. So when I discovered, and it wasn't, again, this isn't my wisdom. This is because wise people poured into me. And wise people poured into me. You know why? Because I asked them to.
Yeah. And you're worth it. You're worthy.
100%.
By the way, you have to be worthy. And what I mean by that is you have to show that the sanctification, the execution part is going to happen. That's when people will invest in you.
Yeah, you got to show the results. You got to put in the work.
Yeah.
But when you discover that you have one life, and here's how I found that out, is because I was able to write out a vision. Once I had a vision for my life, I understood that I have one. I don't have pre-work, during work, and post-work Mike. I got one vision, and I'm going to build it, and we can all do it. Like, if I can do it, you don't understand. If you're listening to this going, well, I work at, the local whatever, I do this, and I just can't get out of it. No, you can. And I don't say that in a disparaging way. I say it like, look, you really can. You have a vision and you realize you have one life, and then you start pointing towards the goal. I don't know. I don't remember how the phrase goes. But if you don't know where you're going, what is it? Then you'll always get there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always get where you never know you're going. So you put a target, right? But that helped me to understand. And freedom came when I understood that I have one life only, and I can build it, right? I'm actually in control. I'm not a victim of anything. Bad stuff happens, and then my response determines whether I'm a victim or I'm a victor.
That's right. And it all is wrapped in the story. And that's the story that we get to co-author.
Mm-hmm.
This story of our lives through these questions that we get to ask. And that narrative, that story really becomes who we, really our reputation, our brand, if you will. And even just yesterday, and we all have days like this. You ever have a day, Mike, where everyone asked you for your time?
Mm-hmm.
It was literally, yesterday I got so many texts. Hey, I just need 15 minutes. If you got, I just need 20 minutes. If you had some time. Fortunately, I had a couple of reschedules because I had a book day yesterday. So those early people, it's like, yeah, I can chat for 20 minutes at 2. But I had some who texted me and said, I need 6 to 8 minutes. I had one person said, I just need 6 to 8 minutes. And this is the text, verbatim, you can hang up on me.
That's
at the
awesome.
8-minute mark.
I love that guy.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't respond to that text until about 9 o'clock at night because, had I given the 6 to 8 and the other one, then I would not have been true to my vision and my commitment to meet my spouse at the appointed time that I had chosen for. I could have said, yeah, sure. And then what do? Call my wife and say, hey, look, I'm going to be another half an hour, Sorry, I got stuff going on.
You built a life, though, that you have this integrity. There's an integrous bubble that, the people around you, I'm not a manifest guy. I think, manifesting is a dangerous concept, but attraction is real, right? You built a life, a story and the story that you tell is, I'm not necessarily going to respond to your emergency, and that's okay, And I think that as you grow personally, I think you realize that there are really very few emergencies in life. If I look back in my life, I could name a couple, car crash or whatever, there's stuff, you got emergencies. But there are very few emergencies. I told this story, where was I? Bible study the other day, on Saturday. I told this story because somebody was talking about, they don't have time, they're frantic, everything's going crazy, man, it's out of control. And I'm like, when I was brushing my teeth, and my, what do you call those? What do you call them? The cabinet. What do you call anyway, the cabinet, where all your stuff is. Your
medicine cabinet.
Your medicine cabinet, your toothpaste, and all your stuff. Right. I open it up to get my toothpaste, and everything just fell out. There was a time in my life that I would have been, oh my God, you know what I mean?
An emergency.
But guess what? I've been around long enough to know that there's a sink right there.
You can catch all of it.
And I open it up, and it is, whoosh, and I just, nothing. I didn't flinch. I just backed up and let it all fall because it wasn't an eternal issue. Everything in there could be replaced or picked up.
Dude,
right?
That's so spot on. Let me tell you what I've been doing, and I'm going to reframe it now that we've had this conversation. I've been doing this probably for the last several years, where in the moment, just like that, in the moment, so many of us have, including myself, have lamented greatly a situation. And it could be as trivial as some stuff falling out of your sink, and it could be as monumental as a flat tire. Or the other day, I just got a flat. I was turning, and there's rebar on the road, open rebar. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it's like, okay, but do I care about this in 5 years? In 5 years, is this going to bother me? Is this situation going to even matter? Think about 5 years ago, the things that you were upset about. And we're not talking about a massive, somebody, a loved one dying or something that you're still grieving, and we understand that. But flat tire, I don't remember the flat tire I had 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
There's 99.9% of the things that I was upset about 5 years ago. I couldn't even recall. You couldn't, if you would have asked me, Nate, name 5 things 5 years ago today, that year, that were massively, impactful that you're still lamenting. I'm like, I don't know, Mike. I can't really name any. Maybe one that I think about from time to time, that was a bonehead move, Nate. But that bonehead move probably had some greater impact later. But you took it to the next level.
Yes.
I look 5 years. You're talking about an eternal.
100%.
I mean, that's like what truly is. Very few things in the grand scheme of life.
There's very little. That's why I've turned money into points.
Yeah.
They don't matter.
Love it.
It's a coupon. It's funny because my wife, when my wife and I got married, we were coming up. We didn't have 2 nickels.
Yeah.
I mean, we really didn't, man. And we were writing the mortgage check, knowing that, okay, if I mail it on Tuesday, that check will be deposited on Monday.
100%.
And it's going to take 5 days so the check will get there on next Tuesday. And you work it out, right, with the mail.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now I understand. I mean, money was everything back then. It's I got to make more money. I got to have security. You look at the 6 human needs. If you're a Tony Robbins camp, you got the 6 human needs, and I needed security so badly. And we all need security. I'm a security guy. But what is worth living for, right? I'm a C.S. Lewis guy. And you probably
Love it.
are too.
Love
I see that in your
Oh, yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
I've got this. I just bought it. I did you know that there's a study that says people who own books, whether they read them or not, actually are more successful and have higher IQs than people who do not own books. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Whether they read them or not, they're more successful and higher IQ. It's the desire for knowledge. If you're someone who desires wisdom, you desire it, and you go and buy a book and you never read it, you put that book on your shelf, you're still somebody who desires knowledge. So guess what? You're going to notice things in the real world that people who don't desire knowledge don't notice. So if you're out there and you got 100 self-help books on your shelf and you haven't read them yet, relax, man.
Congrats.
It's not an
You're
eternal
already ahead of the
issue.
game.
You're already smarter than people. You are way smarter
Not
than
an
people who
eternal issue.
didn't even buy the book. So
Yeah.
give yourself a round of applause.
That's
Good on you.
That's-
But I forgot my point.
Man, I mean, that's a mic drop anyway. Yeah, but-
C.S. Lewis. I want to tell you this. This is important. I got a daily reader by him. And it's one pagers that are excerpts from all his writing. And this particular one said, it was talking about what's worth dying for and what's worth living for, right? And I can't remember verbatim, but here's the gist. Here's the bumper sticker. All right, your country calls you to war. And it's communism or freedom or whatever. It's oppression or freedom. And you go and you die for that cause. That's worth dying for. Someone's drowning. Your wife, your son is drowning. And you jump in to save them. And you save them, but you die. That was worth dying for. But let's say that you're someone who spends your whole life obsessed with one thought. I have to teach everybody on the planet how to swim so that they don't die. And you forsake everything else. You don't have fun. You don't go on vacations. You don't get married. You don't have kids. You don't save money. You don't enjoy God's creation, the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, the streams, the all of it, right? And you're so singularly focused. Is that worth living for? That's not a life worth living for. So we can do things that are worth dying for. But we're also doing things that aren't worth living for.
Come on.
Isn't that?
Come on.
I mean, that's the mic drop of the century from C.S. Lewis. Money is points, and you redeem them for fun stuff at the counter.
This brother, part 2 is coming, but part 2 is coming. We are on fire. So as we close out this part 1, I have a question. What's it for you? Question for you. This is a question that I sometimes will ask a guest if it's the timing works and it's appropriate. Haven't asked you this. You don't know about it, and you'll likely have a pretty succinct answer. No pressure, but it's a vision question. The end of this journey, the side of eternity, will eventually be upon us. You'll be at the great summit, if you will, of life. And if you look back and see all the people who you were able to help and all of the wonderful things that you got to enjoy and do, what is one thing that you will want others to have said about Mike?
Oh, that's powerful. And the first thing that came into my mind, I almost said it, but I want to filter it to make sure it's correct.
Let it simmer for a moment.
What do I want people to say, to have said
about you
after this passing?
You're at the mountaintop.
I'm gone, and they're there. The most important thing. There are a lot of things that I would like, because I do have selfish desires too.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing that I want them to say is this. His example of Christ-like love brought me to Jesus. period.
You are on your way, brother. Thanks for being here.
I love it. Thank you, man.